All right, turning now to foreign policy, and it could look a lot different under a Joe Biden administration. And joining us to talk about what could be coming down the road is former Trump Deputy National Security Advisor and author of Revolution, Trump, Washington, and We the People, KT McFarland, joining us tonight. Good to see you, KT. Obviously, you've got a situation where if Biden does, in fact, take the White House, they're going to want to make a lot of changes. What do you think happens in the Middle East?
Ooh. If they're smart, and I'm not sure they're that smart, but Rob, if they're smart, they'll take advantage of the peace agreement that President Trump has gotten between Israel and all of the Sunni Arab countries. They'll take advantage of it and they'll build on it. Now, if they're stupid and if they're arrogant, they'll probably go back to their Obama-era policies, which were anti-Israel, anti-Arab, and they'll try to somehow get back in that Iran nuclear deal, which was just a disaster from the first place. You know, the Obama administration sold the Iran nuclear deal as this great thing. It was going to stop nuclear weapons in the Middle East. It did nothing. Nuclear weapons by about 10 years. Well, guess what? 5 of those 10 years are up. So if they do go back into that Iran nuclear deal, Iran's going to have nuclear weapons within 5 years, and then everybody in the Middle East will want nukes too.
Yeah. I want to bring in Senate Chairman of the National Iranian Congress, Amir Fakhravar, to join us. Amir, good to talk with you. There you are. I just want to ask, you know, I mean, obviously, I think the administration has done a great job of pointing out the holes in the Iran nuclear deal, why it was so weak. Do you think that a Biden administration would go back in?
Thank you for having me first, Rob. But I couldn't be more agree with KT McFarland.
Yeah.
If Biden can go to the White House, then he can be smart enough. It's a lot of if there. If he can be smart enough to take advantage of the amazing achievement of President Trump in Iran and Middle East. Right. Because it's not anymore 5 years ago, it's not 4 years ago, even it's not 2 years ago, when all Arab countries in Middle East, they have been in fight with Israel. Right now, they are all friends because of Iranian stupid mullahs. And it's totally different era.
Right.
But as we can see, the design of Biden's fantasy administration, it shows us something else, because the Jake Sullivan, we know him when he was serving at the State Department under Hillary. We know what he had done. We know who he was in touch with. The laundry list of Iranian lobbyists in Washington, D.C., they have been his close allies and friends.
Sure.
And right now also they are they put Trita Parsi's name. I'm sure Katie knows Trita Parsi. He was the director of NIAC, National Iranian American Council, the official lobby group of Iranian regime in Washington, D.C. The director of that group, which jumped to another institute funded by George Soros called Quincy Institute, right now, he's named to go and be NSC's director for Middle East. It's like a joke.
Yeah, I completely hear what you're saying. I mean, that is something else. Hearing that come out is very interesting. KT, respond to what he just said there. I mean, you know, just to hear it and to have it all explained like that, I find that very interesting.
Well, and I completely agree with what he said. I would add to it that the people who are joining the Biden administration, if there is one, are the same people who negotiated the Iran nuclear deal during the Obama administration. I mean, John Kerry is coming back in the Biden administration, former Secretary of State. His signature achievement was supposedly the Iran nuclear deal. He's going to come back into the Biden administration. He's going to be somehow in charge of energy policy. So chances are, what he'll do is to screw it up even more. He'll stop fracking. Yeah. He'll then put America back on the Middle East, well, really on the Middle East gravy train, because the American is now energy independent. We don't need Middle East oil. And if they put us back on that track again, where we're dependent upon the Middle East, where we need to be in the middle of all of their, you know, tribal ethnic psychodramas, we'll be in a mess again.
Yeah, and you just wonder. I mean, an incoming administration is not going to want to give any credit to the Trump administration for anything. They're not going to want to learn from any of the things that we've learned over the last 4 years about how to better handle these things. They're going to want to revert to this big scandal, this hacking scandal that we've seen this week. It looks like it's coming out of Russia. The president making headlines, though, saying that Russia may not be responsible. He sent out this tweet: the cyber hack is far greater in the fake news media than in actuality. I have been fully briefed. Everything is under control. Russia, Russia, Russia is the priority chant when anything happens, because Lamestream is, for mostly financial reasons, petrified of discussing the possibility that it may be China. And he puts in parenthesis, it may. There could also have been a hit on our ridiculous voting machines during the election, which is an even more corrupted embarrassment for the USA. KT, he puts this out there. I think he opens himself up to a lot of criticism from the media. Yeah. What do you make of that tweet?
Look, I think that we need to understand that we're under attack, whether it's China, whether it's Russia, whether it's China and Russia together. They've hacked into our systems. 5 years ago, China, during the Obama administration, China hacked into the Office of Personnel Management in the government. Now, supposedly the Russians, or maybe the Russians in conjunction with somebody else like the Chinese, they've hacked into the U.S. government. And this is not a little deal. I mean, I adore President Trump, but I think he's underestimating the significance of it. I talked to a bunch of people, several people in the last 2 days in the White House and in government, and they don't even know the extent of this hack. They're still trying to figure out what happened, much less who did it.
Yeah, and I think his frustration comes from the fact that nobody really cares much about anything that doesn't involve Russia. I think he sees that whenever Russia's behind something or there's something attached to Russia, that's when it gets made into a big deal, and I can probably understand that frustration. Amir, I want to get your final thoughts on this story on the Russia hacking.
Look, 4 years ago, in a book called Comrade Ayatollah, I mentioned how Iranian entire revolution have been designed by Russians, how they trained Iranian mullahs, even Supreme Leader himself, for the revolution. But Russia is not the same Russia we knew 40 years ago, 30 years ago. They are bankrupt. But China is the real deal right now. Right. They own Iran. They own entire Iran, the entire economy, entire government. They bought all the politicians, all the mullahs in Iran. And they signed a huge contract for 25 years to own the entire country. China is doing whatever they want to do from inside Iran to make sure nobody can find their hand inside China's mainland. Yeah. And it's very dangerous to have Biden administration in power, which is kind of owned by China, and dealing with the Iranian mullahs, who they are owned by China too. Just let me add one more thing. A couple of months ago, Javad Zarif, Iranian foreign minister, he mentioned, you know what, when I was at the United Nations early 2000, then I made some personal relationship with a senator called Joe Biden. Then we became very good friends, and we are hoping he can go to the White House, and then everything will be okay for us, for Iranian mullahs. And as we know, Obama, before going to the White House, he was sending love letters to Iranian Supreme Leader, the serial killer, Ayatollah Khamenei. Yeah. And then it was 4 love letters to Khamenei. And then they started their negotiation in summer 2008. And right now, I'm sure Biden team, they started already their negotiation behind the scene with Iranian mullahs, which is a disaster.
Yeah. No, it certainly is. Yeah, that's, I mean, the whole, the John Kerry deal in Iran, we can pick that apart all day long. Amir Fakhravar and KT McFarland, thank you both for joining us. Great to see you both.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. We're talking about China. China's the thing to talk about. It certainly is. Nobody else wants to talk about it, but we do. And Gordon Chang joins us coming up, talking about the hidden hazards of Biden's foreign policy. He knows everything about China and the threat that this country poses on us. That's all coming up after the break. Stay tuned.